are listening to the Practicing People's Podcast. I'm CJ Hammond.
And I'm Jordan White. Together, we'll be taking a journey into the practices that help us align with our mind, body, and soul.
So take a deep breath, release, and remain curious as we explore new ways to enhance our lives.
All right, welcome to the show, everyone. We are so happy to have you with us and hope you're just doing well, right? Like that you're having an incredible day and that things are good in your world. And by listening to this conversation, hopefully it gets a bit better. So today we have with us Keri Mesropov, and she founded Spring, a talent development agency, in effort to make generational diversity in the workplace a blast, not a drag. So with a long history in the arts, Keri brings a unique and creative perspective to building company culture and helping businesses and young careerists reach their fully lit position at work. Keri, we are so happy to have you with us. Thank you for being here.
Oh, the honor is mine. I'm so excited to spend this time with you both. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we are honored. And, Keri, I got the chance when we did our pre-interview to what felt like forever, but was a magnetic, 30 minutes of great conversation. And one of the things that struck me was your energy. And I understand that comes from somewhere, and Jordan gave a great introduction, but can you dive into what makes Keri and a little bit of your background and how you got to such a unique position that you've created and a niche position that has allowed you to grow into who you are today?
Yeah. Okay. What makes Keri? I'll tell you something that Jordan knows, having been physically, in the same space together. I'm really short, Jordan. I don't know if you remember this.
It's true.
And Jordan is very tall.
Yes, and Jordan is very tall. And I think part of what makes Keri is that I was always the smallest person in any room from the time I was little, meaning young. And I think I made a decision that I wasn't going to be small, right? I was physically small, but I wasn't going to be small. And I was going to make sure that I brought energy that was outside the lines of my physical presence, so that I could be seen, but moreover, hopefully ignite a room and conversation and inquiry with whomever I might be with. And so I would blame me being short on a big part of who I am today, actually. And thank you for saying that about my energy. I think it comes from that decision I made a long time ago. My background, you said this, Jordan, in the introduction, my background, we'll get more into this, but has been on the administrative side mostly, but not always, of arts organizations. I was a dancer. I'm making a face, but I was a dancer when I was young and wanted to pursue that, but didn't end up doing that for all good reasons. But I've always had art in my life. It is a spark. It is the reason for a lot of who I am today. And so that plays a role. My longtime career in arts administration and then working with arts organizations across this country in the UK and Canada has helped sculpt me for sure. And then where I'm at today, and I know, Jordan, you and I in particular share this love of the up and coming generations, the youngest generations, and how we do better by them, how we energize them, how we listen to them, how we incorporate them for the progression of this world is something that is truly, it moves me actually and stimulates me. And so it's the reason I started Spring. I started to see things in this generation that were being dismissed by older generations, by workplaces, and these damn kids mentality was something that no thank you, I'm not into that. And I wanted to be helpful, and I wanted to um, help through inquiry create a new dialogue and a new framework to think about generational diversity, especially in the workplace.
Mm. Oh, thank you, Keri. And you used the word inquiry a couple of times there. I'm curious, what do you mean when you say that, and how have you seen that be beneficial?
So I was a journalism major when I was in college and university, and that came from what my father would say Keri was nosy when she was young. And I thought, I got to unpack that because that has a negative connotation. And I think of myself, I don't think of myself as nosy. And so inquisitive is something that I've always been. And the reason why I went on to get a journalism degree. And though I didn't pursue being a journalist, what I know is that when we ask questions and we think about the art of asking the right questions in any room that we are in, it changes the tone, it changes the feeling in a room, it warms it up. And I pay a lot of attention as a practice, as a matter of fact, of thinking about the questions that I want to ask people, even when I go and have coffee with somebody I've known for a long time, because I want to sort of cleave into new parts of people that they might have not have thought about, or that if I have a long-term relationship with somebody that we haven't explored before. So inquiry, in fact, I would say this in this podcast, is a practice of mine that I lean really heavily on. And so I'm so glad you picked up on that. Curiosity and the art of the question changes a room.
So saying that, since we are on this now, the art of asking the right question, which you said, that inquisitive nature is a practice of yours. Can you give me a little bit of perhaps an example of whether it be in a conversation and or in your practices of asking the right questions? No wrong questions per se, but certainly ones that you feel that will enhance conversations. What is the art or the practice of asking the right question?
So here's this is born from a bit of a pet peeve of mine right now. It's a very simple, basic example. And in fact, CJ, when you and I came on this call, I didn't do what my practice is right now with you. So I'm going to apologize and maybe ask you something different. When we first get in a room with somebody, especially people that we know, even if it's people that we don't know, what is the first question we ask them?
How you doing, or something along those lines?
How are you? And that is, I believe that there is a better question in there that ignites even a better conversation from that get-go. So actually, I would ask, the two of you or somebody who I'm meeting, for a business meeting or for a conversation. What is your energy? What's one word that describes your energy today? What are you trying to shake off as you come into this conversation? If you're comfortable sharing that with me, what'd you have for dinner last night? Because it immediately, we're all smiling at each other. It immediately invites a different tone to the conversation. And that's one example of how the art of the question can just help create more depth, more genuine interest in the person or the people that in that example that I'd be having a conversation with.
One of the things that I like that you talked about, that you actually referenced to, was in friendships and stuff. Oftentimes, so many people like the back and forth of the banter of how you doing. Well, you're my best friend. If I asked Jordan that question for my whole life, I certainly hope there's another level to that question. So you're right. In the most intimate of relationships, we can get in these sort of routines that don't allow for the depth that you're speaking to.
That's exactly right. And when we are in companies, we work in organizations, and when the longer we work in them, the more it becomes, I'm looking off to a metaphorical keyboard, and we go, oh, hi, we're on this meeting. Oh, how are you? We don't even connect. But if there is more intention, even in the question, I think it just speeds along a more interesting conversation.
Wow. So cool. Yeah. I've experienced with that, or experimented with that, I should say, a couple of different ways as well. Of like, even what's your day been like today, right? Where you're actually inviting people to have more than just a subconscious like social norm response, right? Like you're actually inviting them into the space, right? And then yeah, depending on the context or the time and the appropriateness of it, like how's your heart doing today? What's your vibe today, right? Like all of those can help people just check in and like help you just feel more connected immediately. So it's beautiful that you started off with an amazing practice already. Thank you.
Yeah, and I love this question of how's your heart today?
Mm.
I love that question. That's a great one. Just think about how it makes you feel being asked that question.
Yeah. Well, it's clear that you've supported a lot of people through even this practice of inquiry and just being a person of support and using your energy to do that. I'm just curious, can you tell us a little bit about just your journey of kind of self-development and how you kind of got to this place? Like what were some of kind of the main things you recall around your journey to where you are today that are worth mentioning?
Yeah. The arts have played, I said this in the beginning, but the arts, performing arts, have played an enormous role in my life. And as I was thinking about our time together, I was thinking and reflecting on just how much the arts and artists have shaped not only who I am, but the things that I practice. And so, part of my story is my mom and my dad, but not always, would expose me to performing artists, and it came in all different ways. So we would go to see the Nutcracker occasionally, but my parents would take me to concerts. Like I remember seeing Olivia Newton-John in concert because I just loved her. I would back in my day, there were variety shows on television, right? Donnie and Marie, and I can't remember what other ones. And I was so fascinated. My parents would take me to see Ice Capades or even the Harlem Globetrotters. That's performance. That's really performance, right? And I could feel my energy shift into absolute focus from a very young age when I would be, opposite of performing artistry of any kind, of any kind. And as I started to think about that, as I got a little bit older and took dance when I was young, have a minor in it from college, I thought, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Because this is out of curiosity, not judgment. But what is this that's captivating you? You're not going to be an artist, but what is it? And I started to realize that the disciplines and the practices of artists are really aligned with who I am and have taught me a lot. So discipline is obvious, right? Artists, even if they're wild and unconventional schedules, they have a discipline. Discipline is I stay up all night and I do my art. So there's discipline. There's self-expression. That is a practice. Self-expression, no matter if I'm a painter, if I'm a sculptor, if I'm a performing artist. There's also an enormous amount of, I'm going to call it quirky authenticity, right? I love I love being around artists. I'm married to one. I'm married to an ex ballet dancer who's a professional ballet dancer. And they just, whether it's they have this funky belt buckle that is just sort of revealed in a moment, or they have this, quirky way of thinking. There's just this quirky authenticity that is front and center that I'm like, yes, that is something I want to practice. I want to be that. We should all be that. We should all be in ecosystems and environments that allow us to be, quirkily authentic. And I saw that in artists. There's a lot of respect in an artist's world, respect for the art, respect for its history, respect for its origins, respect for its ancestry, that I realize I like that. I like understanding the way back here to understand why is it today this way. And so that's something that really that art has taught me as an individual, and that I practice. Respect. Where do we all come from? What is our work origin? What is our work ancestry? And frankly, going back to investigation and inquiry, I mean, artists are constantly pushing and probing and asking questions and pushing boundaries for progress. Many of them are. And that is a practice that I've learned through having art in my life and not being an artist, not being a serious artist. All of that plays a role in who I am.
Wow, there is a lot to unpack in that in a beautiful way, and I'm curious as I wrote down something that was the discipline of expression. And you wouldn't think normally in expression that there needs to be discipline because it's just willy nilly, but it is the repetition of being authentically yourself. And as I am in the arts, acting as well as singing, the thing that I thought about when it's like De Niro is respected by a guy like, let's say, Ryan Gosling. There are your forefathers of this, and there is a generational gap there. So when I apply this to what it is you do with Spring, what are those the ways that you help someone of an older generation come to understand the expression or the art of somebody that is younger than them, and vice versa? How is it that you bridge and mend these gaps where two people can see something completely different from what they perceive at first, but there are so many similarities between the lives we live? We're living the same art expression, just in different times.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I go back to this. Well, I would say to you that one of the things I focus on when I work with, someone from an older generation and someone from a younger generation is we've got to understand the why. We skip that. We say, I'm going to use this example for in the workplace because I work with people who are in the professional world. We have to have people in the office 4 days a week, says older generation. And younger generation says, arms folded, I don't want to be. I want flexibility, right? And the place that I insert myself is to say, okay, let's exchange the why of being in the office 4 days a week. What's the origin of that, and what's the why of that? And young careerists, let's unpack and explore together the why of your need for flexibility. And that mere question of let's explore the why slows people down, gets people to think instead of just knee-jerking. My response should be, we should be in the office 4 days a week, and that's the way it's always been done, and that's the way it should be done. It slows people down and forces positively an examination, an inquiry of why do we do this? Why is that serving us, or why is it not? And I find there to be a little bit of magic in that question, because it forces people to have to reconcile and think for themselves, not just I'm taking this has been handed down to me and trying to push it onto somebody young.
It's so powerful, Keri, what you're talking about there. And one of the activities in the self-leadership program that I guide people through, and CJ is very, very familiar with as well, is removing should from our conversations, right? How often are we shoulding on people? How often are we shoulding on ourselves? How often are we shoulding on this situation, right? And just because someone says we should do something doesn't mean that there isn't the opportunity, as you're implying, to get curious about that. Well, wait a second. Like, how is this helping us operate the best we can, right? Or how is this contributing and to this space, or whatnot? So I'm just curious, what have you noticed as far as helping people open up their minds a bit more to what other possibilities are out there? What are some of your ways of that you've noticed have been effective, maybe for younger people, and then on the other side of the spectrum?
Yeah, one of the greatest tools that I'll tell you the origin of it after I tell you, because it's fascinating about what I do. And it is, I will either engage one on one with folks or do it in a workshop setting. But it's all about, let's explore our work origins, our work ancestry, because what is true is that any individual, we don't come into the workforce without something. I don't want to say baggage, but we come in with beliefs and thoughts. Where do those come from? So we will talk about, what did you see in your family? What did you see from your parents or your guardians? Did they work and grind? Were they work devoted? Did they struggle because they were a single parent and you saw that? What did you see in your family as examples? What did they think about work? Did they come home and go, gosh, I love my job so much and I love my colleagues? Or did they say, ugh, can't stand it? Ugh, What'd you learn? What'd you learn from early mentors and examples? If I worked at a Blockbuster video store and I had a boss who was a very terrible micromanager, what did I learn? That carries with me. The history of work in America? Come on, the Industrial Revolution, people were working 80 to 100 hours a week with no fair labor laws. Henry Ford comes in, sees that productivity diminishes after about 40 hours. That was in the 20s. It's not that long ago. Now we are talking about 4-day work weeks, and we're finally talking about things like burnout. So how does the history of the country that I live in affect how I think about work? And so work origins is something I explore with clients and communities of people that I work with. And I'll tell you, even the older generations will go, oh gosh, wow, I did not know that this is where my belief came from. And I just adopted it. I didn't question it. Younger people will say, oh boy, this is going to serve me as I go into the workforce. This cool stuff from my origins, this I got to watch on. And then we share those cross-generationally. And it just becomes this magical moment of, without having people say, I have experiences I want you to learn from. It kind of comes there, but in this organic way that is all about exploring our work origins. And the reason this came about and that I saw the power of this is at my last real job, or the job before I started Spring. I was with a marketing consulting firm that specialized in performing arts, and it was the pandemic. And the arts, as you both well know, first to go down, last to come up. It was devastating. And our team was feeling it with all sorts of arts organizations, and they were burning out. And all sorts of strange behaviors and beliefs started to pop out of our consultants. And I started to say, why do you believe that? Where did that come from? And then it started to untangle. And so we would record interviews and share it with the rest of the staff about, I am this way because my father was this way, and I realized that doesn't serve me. And so that's a technique that helps sort of soup start conversations and sharing when I work in multi-generational workplaces.
Man, oh man, my mind is spinning now. I'm curious, and you may or may not have a situation that is even able to be spoken about. But in your practice now, have you? Is there an example that you could share with the audience about a specific example where the older, newer generations found that commonality, but prior to that, they were really not understanding things where the things were fixed this way, but we came to understand this.
Through that work origin work, CJ, is that what you're
Yes,
asking
yes.
me?
Forgive. Yeah, through the work origin work, do you have any examples of the practice, which really is exploring the why, where you were able to definitively help a company come from a really a disagreement to an agreement and a resolution where older and younger now coexist seamlessly or more harmoniously?
Yeah. Um, it's a big one, and it's a big flaming topic that I'll zoom out on in a minute. But um, I have a small, it's an arts organization who arts organizations. They are typically run by old white men, being facetious, and then they hire young people who are deeply passionate and will agree to get paid $1.280 to work. Drives me crazy. And then passion for the art form is sort of taken advantage of, I find. So let me get off my soapbox about that and say I was working with a young woman who was intelligent, passionate, and an artist herself, and was working on the administrative side of the business, and just really running up against the very demanding executive leader who was from an older generation than she. And it was her who pushed him to say, we need to work with Keri, actually, interestingly. And so you can imagine what I got in him. What's she going to do? I'm fine. She's the problem. And we started to unpack his origin story gently, carefully, because he wasn't inclined. It felt woo-woo to him. And what we realized was that his identity was so wrapped up in work, pounded in him from his own father. You work hard, you are devoted, you are work devoted, and you do whatever is asked of you. You do whatever it takes. And whatever it takes on this generation who saw the devastation of 2008, recession for parents who are living in a very, it feels very wobbly world, and a generation that a nod to an incredible book called The Anxious Generation that everybody should be reading, that that author Jonathan Haidt describes. We've gone from a play-based childhood, which is we lived in 3D, we played outside, to a phone-based childhood that has created isolation for young people. And the event of the smartphone and social media that took root about 2010, 2012, you see the correlation between that and the real mental health crisis for young people. That's an origin story that employers they just see laziness or disengagement, and you've got to understand where these young careerists are coming from. They're, as Jonathan Haidt says, there's been a giant rewiring of childhood that helps us understand this generation, and it's very important to understand.
I didn't even think of that in the sense of I know that like you don't. I did not. I've never explored the why of being handed a tablet and saying let this entertain you, and then finding your work resilience or the ability to want to work at something. I've never thought of that until now.
That's a great. That's a great short. That's a wonderful encapsulation. There's this funny cartoon in, I think it was in the New Yorker, and it's these parents giving a tablet to their 6-year-old, and they say, "It's been great spending time with you for the last 6 years. Here's your tablet." And it's, so in that case, we unpacked that truth because I was in the midst of reading it. And it really resonated with the young careerist to say, gosh, boy, yes, even though I'm not addicted to technology, oh gosh, I really see. We were able to weave that in, and some empathy grew. And we started to have some real progression and traction in their appreciation of each other through that work. And it was expedited through that exploration of origins.
Wow. Yeah, it's clear that this is a gift you have, Keri, of connecting people through this inquiry. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little more about, because oftentimes when we hear the word why, we can feel maybe a little judged, or it can feel confrontational, right? Especially if, maybe an elder, a more, mature leader is giving a younger person directive, and the younger person is like, why? Right? Like that could lead to some pretty unstable space. So I'm just curious, what do you feel like is the bridge, between um, confrontational why and productive why?
Yeah, it's a really excellent point. And I will go so far as to help somebody that I'm working with form the words. Words matter a lot. And so, just to this point you make, Jordan, so instead of, let's use the example of you're going to be in the office 4 days a week, and I'm the young careerist, and I genuinely am curious, and I say why, and how that lands on an older person, to your point, with the wrong intention. It is um, first maybe a statement which says, "Okay, all right, I understand. I understand what you're saying, and I want us to understand what we're trying to solve for. What are we trying to solve for?" And I think it's in tone as well. I always say to the young folks that I work with, just like practice in the mirror a little bit, your body language, the signals that you're sending off, and see what it looks like to be genuinely curious. Ask a question that you're genuinely curious about, and see what that looks like, and port that over to this question that you want to ask, which is, I understand that's been the case here. I truly do. And I let's talk about it. I want to learn more. I want to learn more. And then you thread in, you figure out how to navigate to get to the why do we do this? Where did it come from? Who started it? You get there. I have a young person that I work with who, that exercise I just described, which is, what is something you're genuinely curious about? And she said to me, and forgive me, I'm not up on pop culture, but apparently there's some beef going down with Drake and the rap community. Do you know about this?
Bits and pieces, enough to know I know a little bit.
Okay, that's more than I do. But she said to me, "Okay, Keri, I'm genuinely curious about what is happening with that drama. I said, okay. So in front of the mirror, I want you to pretend that you're with an authority who knows. How would you ask? She's like, oh yeah, I see. She's like, tell me more about Drake and the beef. Anyway, so it's about asking, getting to the why and navigating the genuine curiosity and cultivating that and understanding how we look when we are genuinely curious and practicing that.
There's something that you're alluding to, which is the why we ask the question, which Jordan has really placed this word in my life a lot that has helped. You are essentially asking, what value does this add or enhance? Like both partners are saying, what value, like, why do I have to be here? What value does it add to have me come 4 days a week? And the person can speak to the value. But again, it's such a nuanced way of asking it with care and intention that isn't just based around why, because this is the way it needs to be. The value when it can be talked about in such a loving way that we really kind of skip past so often.
Yes. And words like help me understand your point of view. That's an invitation for a collaborative conversation. Help me understand. I want to understand your point of view. And I don't want to be that person who just shuts it down with, I don't want to do that. So invite me into a conversation. I want to invite you into have a conversation. Help me understand. Tell me more. Say more. Those are the kinds of words that we can practice to have a richer conversation, especially in these generationally diverse situations that we have all over the place.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, not to take us down a whole other path, but just in general, right? Like as, spouses and with family members. And I mean, there's just so much opportunity for connection to happen. Like every endeavor, every instance almost has the opportunity to create the connection and the deeper understanding if we're compassionate and curious about it, right? And
Is absolutely true. And I would add I would just underscore the body language that we carry forward when we create those invitations. I had an English professor who was so smart and so intuitive, and I don't know if either of you have ever had a class in your lives like this, but it was just discussion. We would read Moby Dick or whatever, and it was discussion based. And I oddly, at that time, I would sort of freeze up because everyone was so smart and engaging, and I was oddly quiet. And then one day I decided, step it up, Keri, come on. And I said something, and he, again, going to the body language, he knew I was quiet. He didn't push me. But then when I stepped forward, he literally knelt on one knee in front of me, and he looked me in the eyes, and he said, and he made this gesture with his hand that was sort of like, come here. I got you. I got you. And he said, say more. Say more. And it was that body language that accompanied those words that I saw the magic of that. And that's something that, I try to practice this even on Zoom whenever I can. What am I saying? How am I making invitations physically?
It kind of speaks levels to your moment, speaks levels to the opportunities that so many have in their lives to be simply by making yourself more inviting. Your experience that you just had sounds amazingly like what a confidence boost to you as well. Your expression, your decision to express with loving curiosity expanded your world, but also like it leapt through you into another person and offered more. And I'm curious, how often is your practice of curiosity, inquisitive nature, how often do you see that like you find other people, because of your curiosity, sort of like breaking out of their shell or being like, Keri, you want to know more about me? But then you see more layers of them. Does that happen often with you? It would seem so. I don't want to guess, but.
Oh, yes. And what's interesting, I'll bet the two of you are similar. When I meet someone who's got more of a rough edge, it's okay. And I'm not going to be inappropriate, right? You learn over time where to walk that line that's not overstepping. But and I find those people to be that that they're deeply fascinated and deeply fascinating and complex, and I thirst to get to know them, and so I love meeting people like that because their stories are they do tend to be so rich and interesting and complex, and underneath this shell that's not immediately ready. And then, yeah, so this is a practice and it's a delight. And I do learn things about people a lot because I genuinely am interested. Genuinely.
And they, if it's not coming from a genuine place, right? And if it's not coming from that place of compassion as well, right? Like that's going to be felt. And that speaks to your point, Keri, of only, what is it? I know there's stats out there, like 7% of communication is the words, right? It's more so the energy behind it, the intention behind it, the body language, all the things that you listed out there. So I'm wondering what have you noticed about consciously asking these questions and consciously using body language and consciously, being so present with people? What have you noticed about that having a positive impact on other people?
Mm-hmm. When anybody takes the time and the intention to listen to someone and go into it with a mind that is, I'm going to learn something, people feel that. People feel that. And what I know about that is that it builds trust, which we don't have enough of in this world. Trust is such an accelerator for progress. It builds empathy, which this young generation is full of empathy, and I love it because that's not been a present trait in the aggregate for as loud as it is with this generation. So, as I think about that practice that I continue to hone of inquiry and attention and intention, what I know about it is that it builds trust, it builds empathy, it builds more genuine relationships in the world, and that connectedness is what will help this world, I believe, be a better place, be a more cohesive place, be more progressed in the things that hold us back today. And so if I can sort of fire start that in a few relationships that I have on a day in and day out basis, boy, count me in. And I love it so much. I love people. I love people, and getting to know people. So that's what I think. I think it has a ripple effect. I hope it does. I hope it does.
I'm getting ripples, just so you know. I'm getting the ripples right now. I don't know if you're aware of this. There is a practice that I've noticed in your speech that is so inviting to more than the less. And it's the practice of saying and. I very rarely hear you use the word but or anything of like that. Have you been, it's so inviting to the more. And there's this, and there's this. Have you noticed that at all? There's just this wonderful way that you're able to continue more conversation by saying that. I don't know if it's something you practice at all, though.
Thank you for picking up on that. I've never been told that. And it's what it's my mind aligns with that. I mean, that is my sort of way in life. And what an astute observation. It's not intentional. The only thing that I can think of is that I had a wonderful mentor and boss, who is glass half full person. And she would always say to me, what is in your ledger? Is it an or an and? And it wasn't about but it's similar. What is your ledger? Are you creating or statements or and statements? That's the only thing. But it was in a sort of a different context. But thank you for pointing that out.
It just goes hand in hand with so much that you've said, and with that, the thing that you spoke to that Jordan and I have talked about so often is your sense of knowing came from trial and error. But what you do in your day in day out life is you're seeking more understanding than knowing. You can come to knowing through more processes, but I'm so enthralled by, like, it's just so crazy to me how you're remaining open and curious and looking for more understanding than knowing in these situations. Because even with spring, it seems to be that I'm going to gain an understanding through this, and ultimately we can call it a knowing. But the more I seek to understand, the more I will know. It's like a byproduct of it. Do you know? I guess it goes without saying, but
Totally. Absolutely. We'll get to the knowing. But we've got to get to an authentic knowing, not a cookie cutter knowing. And that begs us to be open-minded and take a journey. That's what it begs. It must be. Otherwise, we just have cookie cutter, uncustomized, sort of boring knowings.
how you doing? Good. Like we said,
That's
good.
right.
It doesn't, let me understand you by asking a different question, perhaps,
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Let me show you what I'm really interested in. I am interested in knowing more about you, even if I've known you for 20 years.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. For
Wow,
sure.
to be on the receiving end of it is got to be special, Keri. It's just beautiful. It's clear you practice what you preach, right? And even what CJ just pointed out there, like there's this and part to people, even, right? Like what else is there, right? And like genuinely wanting to know, not selfishly or not so you can get someone pegged, but it's more so just genuinely, helping maybe even them understand themselves a bit more, right? And that's a big gift we can offer, of course, as coaches and whatnot. But this may be a part two conversation, but I'm curious what you've noticed maybe in the industry, because it seems I just hear the objection of, I don't have time to get to know people at work. I don't have time. We've got this KPI to meet. We've got this deadline here. Like we don't have time. I just need people to do their job. So I'm wondering if you've heard that come up at all, and how those conversations maybe sound with spring in your take.
All the time, I hear that question. I don't have time to mentor. I don't have time to give him feedback or her feedback or them feedback. And this is where I will be a little more black and white than I am in typical world, and I'll say, let's go find the time. Let's go on a scavenger hunt. Wrong word, bad word. Let's go on a hunt. Let's go find it. Because in this case, in this world, I find that busyness is a sort of a badge of honor. It goes back to work devotion. If I'm busy and I don't have time, that is in my experience, is a front that I'm scared to do what you're asking me to do, because it's hard. People stuff is hard. And so I'll just say, let's go find the time. let's go on looking we hunt mushrooms. My husband's Russian. And so mushroom hunting is culturally a very important part of their culture, oddly. Let's go on a mushroom hunt. So I actually move the conversation to, it's a way of moving the conversation from, I don't have time, not going so far as, what are you afraid of? Because that can create bristles. But it is, I understand. It's a soft way of saying, I understand. And I'm not going to let you off the hook. Let's go find it. And so it's like shaking out the cushions of we audit meeting time. We go through sort of a time audit to discover, oh, look, we found 2 hours in a week. And then that's all it takes. It doesn't, we're not talking about 7 hours. Leaders tend to get very overwhelmed with how much time are we talking about. But that's a place where I don't stop to explore the fear, because sometimes it feels a little intrusive if I don't know the leader as well. And there's also, I'm not going to just take, I don't have time. Nobody. Have we ever met anyone, the three of us, who has said, I've got so much time to be the leader that I want to be? No. This is not a unique problem. Let's go find it.
Yeah. Such a call out. One sec, CJ. It's just something you're talking about there, Keri, is so powerful, because, sometimes my answer to that is, what if an hour of dedicated, purposeful time made all the hours of the week better?
Yeah, that's
right?
wonderful.
So it's similar to what you're saying of like, okay, that's cool. We're still going to go find it though, because it's going to have a greater impact. It's not just a checklist thing we're doing. Like, by having an intentional conversation, getting to understand this challenge we're facing, getting to understand the people you're working alongside or leading or even managing up to, right? If we get to understand it, if we make the time to do that, that can change and influence everything. So it's so cool how you talk about it.
This is brilliant. What if 1 hour made all the other hours better? That is brilliant. I love that. And it's true.
If I could now, this is leading me to somewhere because of both of what you just said. It's like, I don't have the time to, you don't have the time not to. And I remember that with my practice of meditation. My practice used to be, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time for this, And it was like, sort of like, CJ, you don't have the time not to, because your life is too important. And for you in the business space, I can maximize the quality of your business and perhaps then therefore the output. If we set aside this time, like Jordan said, this 1 hour could perhaps maximize the value of you, your company, and your output. That's just,
That's a wonderful summary. That's a great summary. That's right.
Do you have any more practice? Like, your practice of curiosity goes over so much, and it allows for you to just come across as so authentic, so wonderful, so open. Are there more practices that you instill within that make Keri, who she is today?
Yeah. I'm a runner. And, for our listeners, I'm not going to say go be a runner. But the story of how that came to be for me is I want to share it with you. It's a bit personal. So there was a point in my life, I was in my early 40s, where my health kind of deteriorated and I wasn't attending to it. I was having some mental challenges, and my physical health was declining. I was, I'm 4'10", and I gained about 25 pounds. It's a lot on a frame of being 4'10". And I kind of woke up one day and went, "What? How did this happen? Wait a second. I I want to delve in here, and I want to do the work. I like doing the work of whatever it is that I've been successful at. The end game is glorious, but I like the journey. And so how do I get back there? Not that I'd been much of an athlete. Honestly, my life I danced and dabbled at a gym and things like that, but and I thought, what requires discipline? What can I do? At the time I was traveling a lot for work? What can I do that I won't be able to blame? Oh, there was no swimming pool at the hotel, so I couldn't do a swim. What could I do? And running fascinated me. I just thought it was, incredible. And being able to be meditative while you're running, being alone and achieving a goal, and the discipline of it. I believe a lot in the practice of doing and repeating and rehearsing and discipline. And so I started to run. And if my husband were here, he would joke and say, in the early days, we would do we would do like fun 5Ks. I could hardly make it through. He would just have his hand on my back to say, I'm here. I got you. I'm here. And it was tough and it was humiliating. And yet I was like, no, damn it. I am going to do this. I'm going to do this. And, my mental challenges started to get better, more clear. So that discipline of learning how to recover from mental and physical challenge was a beautiful journey for me. And it just was repeating and rehearsing, I'm doing air quotes, and saying, I will not compromise this. I will stay steady. This is a non-negotiable, because it had so much more benefit than just becoming stronger as a runner or becoming a runner. And that the practice of discipline is something that I turn to when I feel like I'm a little on the edge, or I'm a little outside that hub of that wheel, whatever that means, if I'm mentally or physically or emotionally little wobbly. I just tuck in on discipline. And running has taught me that. Running, whatever our listeners game of choice is, but running taught me, look what can happen when you stay disciplined.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's cool to watch you talk about it, and it kind of goes full circle to how we started, of kind of knowing your why too, and tapping into like why am I doing this practice in that gentle, compassionate way, not judging the mental challenges, not judging, the other health, things you were facing, but really getting curious about you, right? And that's what called you, and for you to pursue it and stick with it, it's inspiring. So thank you, because clearly you are in great mental shape and great, just you're contributing in powerful ways. So another practice we talked about, it's unrelated, but I'm hoping you can talk a little more about it. In our pre-conversation, you had mentioned encouraging people to have friends within different generations. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I'll start with the story that the impetus to why I believe this is so important. So when I was in my 20s, I had a best friend. She was in her 80s. Her name was Marianne. And she was a volunteer where I worked at an arts organization, and that's how we got to know each other. She was German, grew up in a very tumultuous situation, just one thing after another after another. And the stories that she would tell me about her upbringing, about her life, the meals that she would share with me, the interest that she showed in me genuinely in the ways that we've talked about was such an example to me. And what is true, because I'm a bit of a data geek, is that our youngest generation in the workplace today, not on the earth, but Gen Z, they are suffering. 7 out of 10 say, I am suffering from anxiety or depression, or I know somebody that is. It's something. And a lot of it is blamed on the isolation and loneliness that they feel. Guess what elderly folks also face? Isolation and loneliness. And how these two, how generations, not just these two, but how generations come together for the benefit of both, and the gentle friendship that develops over story sharing and interest is some of the most beautiful dawnings that I've seen in relationships, including my own. My friend Marianne is, long since passed away, but I carry a little piece of her and our relationship with me, like in my metaphorical pocket every single day in my heart. And I pursue those relationships. I'll say to my husband, we don't have enough gray hair in our friendship group. We gotta, we gotta go searching for that. And when I work with young people, I'll describe this, and this generation is empathetic and interested, and they almost hands down will say, I know somebody in my realm who is elderly and who's not a relative. That's important. Not necessarily a relative, somebody outside of that. Oh, somebody I work with, or somebody who's my mom, my friend's grandmother. I love her. And I will say, go interview, go spend time. What did you learn? They can teach each other things that nobody else can teach one another just by being. So I'm a big fan of for young people to pursue gray-haired friends. Oh, yes. And, older people, I find many, not all, older people they're just at a stage in their life where they're just softer emotionally and more porous. And so they are genuinely interested in hearing about why are you interested in that? Why do kids your age they have that openness to learn more? I find that with elderly people, older people. So it's a win-win.
Is there, as we come to a close, I'm just curious. You just said something amazing there, and it's okay if there's nothing, but if there's something, I sure would love it. Are there any more insights or messages that you could give to the audience? Just parting thoughts or words of wisdom that you might give, whether it be to the older generation or the newer generation, that might be able to take something with them from this that they haven't already gotten.
Mm-hmm. It's a belief that I established with an old colleague of mine. I share it with her, and it is people do everything. So we're very romanticized and mesmerized by AI and technology and global this and global that, and strategics this and strategics that. People will always be the fuel behind all of that. People create those things and are the propellant to making amazing things happen, but it will always be people. That is my belief. And so how we honor that in our daily interactions, how we come together to foster and fortify that propellant in each of us is critical and key. And I want to see us talking as much about that as we talk about things like AI taking over the world. Let's not forget where that came from.
Wow. Well, Keri, on behalf of, CJ, myself, our listeners, thank you. Seriously, thank you for making the time and to just show up as you are. I got to experience you in person, right? And everything that you've talked about today was completely lived out. And even before I knew you, I just had like this attraction to who you are as a person. And it's just, it's beautiful and to be connected with you. And we're so grateful you came on the show. And I'd imagine there's some people that are very inspired by a lot of what you had to say. So if they're looking to get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Oh gosh, it would be my email, which is Keri, Keri, at spring-talent.com. And I just want to say thank you to both of you. You know, CJ, I feel like I've known you a lot longer than we've interacted, but you two are so attentive, so genuine, so authentic. And Jordan will laugh, and I hope you take this and this is a superpower of yours. But I said this to you when we met in October, and that is there is your physical presence, the way you carry yourself is so it is so regulating in such a beautiful way. Like, I was in that room with you for 10 minutes and I was like, I know who that guy is. And I want to be next to him because you just bring this authenticity. Both of you do. You just bring this authenticity that is clear and genuine, that is so rare. We will make it not rare. But I really appreciate it. I really, really appreciate it.
Received. And that's my teammate right there. That's my teammate. I'm so proud to talk. Every time I get to talk about Jordan, I feel I'm so proud of being able to have a friend like that allows me to grow as a human, a boyfriend, a son, everything that I do. So Jordan, you're getting your tea. Keri, thank you as well. But again, I agree with everything that you say. Both you guys are amazing. Here we go again with the circle of it.
Here we go again. And the fact that CJ has a lightning bolt, is it a logo for something on your cap?
Geez, I took this from my girlfriend, and she's probably like, when am I ever going to get this back? But it's mine now. I think it's a little it's a lightning bolt here, but I feel it. It's infectious.
I love to say, how do we capture lightning in a bottle? I love talking about lightning in a bottle, and so I love that cap.
Divine moment here. We were all meant to have this conversation and be connected.
Yes, we were.
We were.
Well, Keri, please come back and have another conversation with us anytime. And please know you have two super fans of you and your work and who you are just as a person. And thank you again for being here today. And we look forward to staying in touch.
This was my pleasure and my honor. And thank you both. And I hope we can make time again soon to be with each other.
Awesome. Next time. Thank you for joining us today on the Practicing Peoples podcast. We hope you found our conversation inspiring and thought-provoking. We appreciate your support and passion for personal growth and self-improvement.
To help build the Practicing Peoples community, please follow us on Instagram at Practicing Peoples Podcast for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and engaging discussions. Liking and sharing our posts will spread the word about the podcast to others who can benefit from these conversations. You can also reach out to us at our website, www.practicingpeoples.com, for more materials and ways to tap into the community.
Leaving a rating and review on your preferred podcast platform is a valuable way to support us and help potential listeners discover our show.
Remember, personal growth is a journey we embark on together. Let's build a community where we uplift and inspire one another to achieve our true potential.
Thank you for being part of the Practicing Peoples podcast family, And until next time, keep practicing and keep growing.